Hi, Dr. Tia Wheatley. We are welcoming you to the Rule Breaker studio today. I'm so excited to chat with you, learn more about you, and share you with our listeners. So, without further ado, let's just jump in and I'll give you the floor and you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Alyssa. I really appreciate the invitation, and it's so nice to meet you too, Crystal. It's a cold morning here in Los Angeles, but I'm excited to sit here and talk with you guys this morning. I think this invitation has really got me thinking because I was really surprised when you reached out to me, Alyssa. You and I are colleagues. We go way back,
Yeah.
several years to grad school at University of Kentucky. And I was really shocked that you thought that I was a rule breaker, honestly. I took it as a compliment. I remember texting that back to you. I was like, thank you. And I know that you've had some very prolific, very accomplished guests on your podcast so far. And I just wanted to thank you for including me in this group of very well-rounded people. I don't consider myself that way, but it's really humbling that you would invite me to this. So I thank you guys both for your time and the invitation. But I guess for people who don't know me, I'll take time to introduce myself. My name is Tia Wheatley. I do have a doctorate from the University of Kentucky. We graduated in 2017. Originally as a clinical nurse specialist, specializing in hematology, oncology, and stem cell transplant. Later went back and got my acute care postmaster certificate from the University of Pittsburgh. Now working as a nurse practitioner at a large academic medical center in Southern California. I guess my journey is a little bit atypical because I did start out as a nursing leader after I graduated and worked in nursing leadership for about 7.5 years. And then within this past year, made the decision to go back to full-time clinical practice. And I guess that brings us to where we are today of talking about some of those breaking of rules within the healthcare space. I think it was a decision for me to leave leadership, not because I was unhappy with my institution or unhappy with the work, but I think it was just not serving me anymore. And I really took time to reflect and think about things and take an evaluation of what I found important and what my priorities were. And really what struck that was my dog had passed away, and I don't have children. I'm kind of like a child-free kind of rule breaker in that sense too, but my dog was sort of the only thing that made me feel maternal. And after she passed away, it was a really hard thing to go through, and I had a lot of time for reflection. And I just remember that week leading up to her passing away, it was very sudden and unexpected, but I was so busy at work and I was not here, and I was really upset that I didn't have time to spend with her towards the end if I knew that was going to be the end of our time together. And so I just had this moment of thinking, why am I spending all this time in this little office, checking emails, going to these meetings, having the same discussions over and over again, wanting to do innovative things, thinking outside the box, only to be told, no, we can't do it that way, try to do it this way, still getting the same result. The needle barely moves, and then we have another meeting again, and we're kind of back at the drawing board. I just was tired of that cycle, and I wanted to get out of it. So I mean, I'll stop there because I know you guys have questions and want to jump in, but that's kind of the impetus for why I decided to go back to clinical practice.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because yes, I mean we did go to school together, and I feel like both of us inherently like we followed the rules, right? We're pushy, strong women, and we air it all out when we need to. But I feel like inherently, we go by what's follow the rules. However, I think there are things about us that we're like not accepting, right?
Yes.
And really, that was what like struck me. I was like, oh, I want to have this. I think we should share this conversation, with other people because other people may be experiencing that, right? And I think it's important that number one, as women, and number two, as leaders and as nurses, that we really talk about like, hey, you go through things and it changes you, and it may not be the job that fits in that space anymore. and really talking about how you evaluate that. So I just want to, number one, thank you for your vulnerability to share. I think I do have children, and I could not imagine something happening to one of my kids, right? Like even an injury. My daughter had like a beach accident. She like slid up in the sand, had a huge like chunk of skin come off of her hip, and I was like, oh my God, my baby, let alone, like losing something that has that much value to me
Right.
as a person. So I think those things really do change us. I do have just like a question and maybe some exploration. When you were talking about, like, it gave you cause for pause, right? What is that when you think about reflection, or when you're talking about that reflection, that reflective journey? If someone was feeling like they were in that situation, like how can they go about like really exploring, like what does it mean to reflect? What does it mean? How do I walk this journey to make this kind of decision, right? Because it's not an easy decision, right? That you're going to make a job change,
Right.
you're going to make a career adjustment. So, would you be willing to just kind of share kind of what that?
Of course. And I think it comes more naturally to me, just having worked in an oncology space for 12, 13 years at this point. Um, you know, Life is very fragile. And I see that a lot in my career, even in nursing leadership, not being directly involved in patient care. The nature of the work that we do it's very vulnerable. And you're oftentimes with people at the most vulnerable times of their lives. And just taking those moments for gratitude, that's always been sort of a foundation for me as an oncology nurse, and even now as an advanced practice nurse, because it can be very emotionally taxing. And so you kind of have to find those coping mechanisms to get through some of these hard periods where there's waves of despair and people not doing well, and how do you continue to go back to work. I actually worked with a former colleague of mine at City of Hope, Dr. Erin Kopp, and she's really a proponent of mindfulness. And I remember when she was doing her DMP project, she was really teaching us sort of practices of mindfulness to do even throughout the day of our nursing practice or advanced practice nursing, to go from one scenario to the other and still be able to take time for yourself. And so I think really learning those principles of mindfulness, of just being present, taking time to really slow down, put the phone away, step away from the computer, and just be with myself and the things surrounding me, so that way I can clear all the buzz out and really have that, soft, reflective space to think, okay, this really traumatic event just happened for you. You just lost something that meant the world to you very suddenly. Take time to evaluate what's going on. Are you doing the things that are making you happy? Because what if that happens to yourself? What if that happens to, maybe somebody, a person that I hold close to me or have a close relationship with? Are you happy doing the things that you're doing now? Is there something more that you want to do? And it's not that I wanted to do more in the sense of, I think you hit the nail on the head, Alyssa, when you said you and I are very much rule followers, right? Like, we went to school, we did the advancement, we did the things, we had sort of this trajectory for our lives. I did all of those things, and I've proven to myself that I can do those things. I think I'm at the point now in my life where I can step back and say, hey, I did those things and I was actually really effective and good and great at them, but I don't need that to fulfill me. What are some things that I need to fulfill me? It's more time with the people I care most about, and it's spending more time investing in myself as a person. And, I don't know where that comes from. I think it's just inherently developed over time with the type of work that I do. And people that I've met along the way that sort of has shown me there are more things to life than just this career and advancement in career.
Oh my gosh, you are speaking my language. So
I can see you excited in the chair. I was
yeah,
like, oh, Chris is ready.
yes. Well, I'm just thinking, so I work in the leadership development space. And so it's hard. It's hard to watch someone who's an exceptional leader step away from it, right? Because you're like, oh man, we need the best of the best here. And at the same time, when I'm doing the majority of the work, and it's usually with the executives that I spend the time with, and they're the less vulnerable group, if I'm being honest. But if I see a tear fall, it's always that loss of time,
Mhm.
the important things that I missed, whether it's with a loved one, with children, it doesn't matter, whatever it is important to you, that's where that regret comes from. But it's really hard to step away. And I don't know if it's ego or pride or what, but there are a lot of people that find themselves in either it's, I need to develop my time management, stay in leadership, or I need to pursue something that brings me more joy in what I'm doing. And how hard was that to say, I'm stepping away from, you say you're stepping away from leadership. I have to challenge that a little bit because you're an APP. You're still a leader. You may not be a people leader, but you're still a leader. But how hard was that? If there's someone who's like, I'm not made for this. This is where I'm called to serve. How do you get there?
It is good, and I think I agree with your point of it's not stepping away from it, it's just sort of repackaging it and doing it in a different space. And I think that'll answer the question that you guys always end with at the end. But it really wasn't a hard decision for me myself once I came to terms with it. I think growing up, I'm originally from Kentucky. I think growing up as a biracial woman in Kentucky, you sort of have this feeling of needing to prove yourself. I was always in spaces of I was really the only kid of color, maybe sometimes even the only woman present in spaces. I know Alyssa's probably had same experiences being biracial woman from Kentucky. And so I sort of went on this journey of, well, I'm going to prove everybody wrong, and I'm going to get my doctorate, and I'm going to excel, and I'm going to show people that I'm smart and this and that and the other thing. And maybe that was a little bit of childhood trauma of trying to, make up for people maybe discrediting me when I was younger. And I don't know if it just comes with age or time or, you did these things and you accomplished these things and you achieved them, but I always knew I could achieve those things. And so really making the decision to enter a different space was not challenging because I think it goes to your point of I'm not stepping out of a leadership role. I'm repackaging it and doing something new. I'm taking the skills and the experiences that I've learned along the way, and now I'm comfortable with myself and my abilities to say, hey, I don't need this fancy title in order to be effective and do the things that I know need to be done for my patient population. I mean, I was at the point of my career where the next step was getting into those director roles and, working with a lot of executive people. I just didn't feel like that was authentically me, and that's okay. And I think, having this podcast and telling people it's okay if you don't want to go that route, but how can you take your skill and practice and passion and put it into a place where you can be a leader and be the most effective? I think those are the conversations that we should be having because people do want their time. People do want to be authentic. People want to be themselves and have these relationships with people outside of their work. I mean, that's just the human nature and human experience. I think more people might be willing to do it if we made it a safe space to be okay with it. Like we don't have to be an executive leader. I don't feel that way anymore.
Right.
I think I got chills just listening to the conversation because I can empathize, especially with having a similar background as far as being biracial. And though, my skin tone doesn't always say that, people who know you, they know who your dad is, they know who your mom is, they know those things about you. When you come from a, rural small town like we did in Western Kentucky, you often are met with that people underestimate you. They don't see that you have that same value. And so I can definitely empathize with that. Oh, the need to accomplish, right? The need to accomplish. And then, I'm also kind of at that point of like, okay, I have children, I have to make decisions that how do I support them and their growth and really not perpetuate, right, that view of need to accomplish. Like you always got to be, like doing the next big thing and not be living in your moment. So I so want to just kind of call out what you're saying as far as like live in your moment, like evaluate what works and what serves you, and anything that isn't serving you, you will have to let it go. And I think that's really how we are able to just show up as ourselves, right? Be ourselves, walk in ourselves, and really find that joy. And I think that's what we want for nursing, right? Like, I love the profession of nursing, and I think we find so often that we're pushing people. Maybe even, maybe there are a few people that they need a little nudge, like, okay, you need a little nudge, like, we see you have this skill, and maybe I need to pull it out of you a little bit. But I think we're constantly like pushing people who maybe are really good in one role to like do something else because they're so good in this role, instead of really understanding like what it is that they want for themselves, and helping to just fuel their joy in that current state, in that current role. And I think that's how we really will eventually be able to see like more passion and more people and more connection just in our profession as a whole, is just helping people to be okay and to be authentically themselves and operate in the roles that they feel most connected to, right? What fits and serves your whole life, and not just your work life, but your whole life, because it's your whole life that's impacted by those 40 hours or 36 hours or whatever you're working. It's your whole life that's impacted. So I just, I mean, I appreciate that you're walking in that and sharing how beautiful that can be, because your skin is glowing, the hair is flowing, and I'm loving it. I really am. So,
well, thank you. This is the work-life balance.
I'm trying to say it's working for you.
I think that you made two really good points that I wanted to make sure to bring up today as well. And I think the first one is, we as nurses, advanced practice nurses, nurse practitioners, the culture is to always pluck the very strong clinical practice person and put them in this leadership administrative track. That's what happened to me in my own career, right? I was working as a staff nurse. I was on, the unit practice councils. I had started a new committee with my DMP program to create a program for our transplant patients there to move the needle on quality initiatives. Oh, we need to pick this person with all of this passion and clinical practice and put her in an office, is what happened to me, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like we're creating this vacuum of people that are left in these clinical spheres that are very passionate, want to do the right thing, but might not want to go on this journey either for time commitment, financial commitments, things like that. But then we're putting people in these spaces where they aren't trained to be administrative leaders in the sense of leading people, right? So my passions are program design, evidence-based practice, quality improvement. But I was often in my leadership role managing people. And I wasn't ever prepared or trained, nor did I have the desire to do that. That's not the type of person that I am. I think you can tell I'm a very, informal, very personable person. I don't like telling people, oh, you need to be doing this or need to be doing that. Do whatever you want. Let's all try to get to a common goal. What are your skills to get us there? It has always been my approach. And I think that's why we see a lot of people in these leadership administrative positions not excelling, because it's not the work that they thought that they would be doing. In full transparency, I didn't think I would be doing that type of work. I was being asked about staffing and budgets and things that are more of a managerial, perspective or hat or role in my view anyway, as opposed to, okay, what are our quality initiatives? What was your evidence-based practice results from this? Okay, you wrote this really great policy. Let's look at the outcomes that we're able to achieve and how much money we've saved as an institution, as opposed to some other sort of financial managerial things that I felt I had no influence over as a clinical leader. I think that's why we have such a struggle with even getting, recruiting some of our younger nurses into the leadership tracks, because we don't adequately prepare them for some of these people-facing managerial roles. But I also think, too, there's probably a space or an opportunity for our academic institutions to better prepare us for some of these things. We were sideswiped by the pandemic, and that became more of a how do I support people and emotional needs of people. I don't have any training in that, and I'm often found myself in spaces where I'm trying to manage emotions of people just to get through the day. I'm not qualified. I don't feel like I'm qualified to do that. Maybe people felt that I was able to give them support. But I really think that there needs to be more of like a professional conflict management, people relations sort of information or education that are given to some of our administrative leaders, because oftentimes that's part of the stress of why they don't want to be in those roles, especially for me. So I'm really glad that you made that point of plucking those people. Instead, what can we do with those people in that place being passionate like I was? How do we mold them and get the best out of them so they're also happy in the work that they're doing? It wasn't that I was unhappy as a staff nurse, I just knew that I could do more. And doing more is being an advanced practice nurse now, working at a higher scope of practice and licensure, but then also having a doctorate where I can do some of these translational science things. We have this really beautiful, nice research study that was done in a very controlled environment. But me as a DMP, how am I going to do this in the real world with people and variables and less resources? And do I get the same outcome? I get a lot of joy out of doing that. And there's nothing wrong with that. No. It's just a different type of leadership.
You are speaking my love language, because that is why I do what I do.
Right.
Same thing.
We need people to be comfortable with this. It's okay.
We're all plucked as the expert clinicians. And I always say I was trained, I could save your life, but here are the keys to the office. How do I hire somebody, fire somebody, manage, run a business?
Right.
And so I dedicate my whole life to trying to help these people, but it's always on the back end rather than, hey, there's somebody who really wants this role. Let's get them prepared before they even get there.
Right.
And gosh, love the opportunity to be able to do that, but you're nailing it. And then I think also just span of control. We ask, one, you're performing outside of your skill set unprepared. Let's prepare you, but also everything that we ask for a nurse leader to do is just insane. I mean, the number of direct reports that people have, the number of pilot projects they're doing, the complexity of the units they manage.
Yes.
I mean, it's just so.
That was sort of what led to a space of, I was really busy leading up to this traumatic event in my life, right? I was the only clinical nurse specialist for the entire oncology program at an academic medical center in Southern California. That was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of things to have to manage. There were actually 2 positions to do the job that I was doing, but the other one went unhired for years after that person retired. So I was basically doing the job of 2 people.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of implications with that. Number one, you're trying to always do the best thing for patients, because ultimately the policies and quality initiatives and things that you were implementing directly impact patient care, nurses, physicians, everybody. But 2, then it became a lot of pressure, because then it was like, well, Tia says that we need to do this. And it's like, I don't have that much power, and nor should I, nor do I want it. And it becomes less of the literature is telling us to do this, but this one person that has this role, who is the only person in this role, is telling us to do this. So it must be just because Tia said so. I wish I was smart enough or powerful enough, impactful enough to do that. But I think that's where also leaders get imposter syndrome, stressed out. I had a lot of anxiety, honestly, surrounding, if I make this decision, who's my check and balance? I would often collaborate interprofessionally with other people just to make sure, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right track? This is what the research and literature are saying, but give me your clinical expertise, because it shouldn't just mean me, the final, gravel saying that this is what we're going to be doing. And I think if we had more resources for these leaders in these spaces, where they're not thinned out, where they don't have all these direct reports, where we have people with the skill set to do certain aspects of the job, maybe we wouldn't have all of this burnout and turnover that we're seeing in the leadership space. I don't know. That's where I look to you, Crystal, for the expertise. But just from my own experience, yes, I can see how somebody even in a position higher to mine would be burnt out from having to do all of that work.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's it. There's no magic recipe. I'll tell you that. There's a lot of research going on out there. And the answers so far, delegate, eliminate, automate, and we got to think about it differently. But I haven't seen anybody that's got it entirely figured it out yet. But we are having the right conversations for
That's
sure.
what I was getting ready to say. I think the conversations around span and scope are definitely being had a lot more. It's a lot more prevalent, like when you're looking at roles and things like that. I mean, they are talking about the scope and span of the healthcare leader, the nurse leader in general. And I think those conversations are going to be very impactful as we move forward, because just hearing like your real life perspective on this, I think is so impactful, right? Like here sits like a very capable, very competent, very passionate person who felt the pressure, and the pressure is ultimately like what led to being part of your reevaluation, and how sustainable that role is, and did it serve you and serve your higher purpose. And I think that's really really powerful, just to hear that take on what it looks like to walk those shoes and make those decisions. So I think that's so valuable.
Thank you.
Well,
There's another point that you made that I can't remember now. I forgot what it was. I felt like I should speak to it as well. I'm trying to think. I'm sorry.
okay.
Maybe it'll come to me.
Okay. Well, we're at the point where we need to know if you're breaking any rule in healthcare. Tia, what's the rule?
So I thought a lot about this, and I don't really see myself as rule breaking, and that's what just sparked I remember what you said earlier. Other people see things in you that you don't see in yourself, right? So a lot of the opportunities that I took in my career is because somebody said, hey, I think you're a great candidate for this, or even Alyssa, you texting me and saying, hey, I think you'll be a great guest on this podcast. And I didn't really think that, my experience was anything that anybody cared about. So that leads me to what I was thinking about to answer your question. I think it goes back to what we were saying before. In order to be an effective leader, especially within the nursing profession, I don't think that you always have to do the traditional hierarchy of administration and leadership. There are things that I'm currently doing as a nurse practitioner that are leadership-esque type activities. I currently serve as the associate editor for the Oncology Nursing Society Clinical Journal of Oncology Nursing, which is a publication that comes out quarterly. And I serve as the associate director for their quality and safety department. So I'm using my DMP evidence-based practice leadership skills to mentor nurses, APPs across the country that are leading this really great work, impacting patient care, nursing outcomes, achieving these wonderful financial outcomes and quality initiatives, and helping them publish that in a journal so other people can learn from that and recreate and emulate those things in their institution. So we can sort of get some standardization, hopefully, across our oncology practices. I get people a lot of the times that are doing this fantastic work. They just don't know how to put pen to paper to put it into a scholarly work to share it with others. And that's where, I get a lot of joy out of. I'm still dabbling in these little things that I've learned a lot across the way. But now I'm putting my influence into somebody else that may have thought they couldn't have done it before. Now we have their work out in the community so others can learn from it. And now they've been inspired to hopefully continue to do this type of work in the future because of the success that they've had with this first initiative. And that's more meaningful to me than having a director title, money, anything that would come with going up that hierarchy. Because I'm seeing the fruits of my labor. I'm having time to mentor other people to hopefully come behind me and do that. And that's the mark of a true leader.
Oh,
and if I'm able to do that and still have time to pour into myself and be present with things that are important to me and be happy, I don't know how else you could excel in your career and have it all doing other things. I really am happy with the decision that I made.
Oh my gosh, you're still in a leadership role, because that is the definition.
Yeah.
Real leaders build other leaders, and that's what you're doing.
Right. And it's not about the personal accolades. It's who you bring along with you. And you're still able to do that without fancy titles and your own office and things like that just really didn't matter to me.
Well, that's why you're here, because that was the whole impetus for this. We believe in sharing the amazing things that people are doing out across the country. There's amazing work being done, and you're just one of them. So let's elevate it. And I don't want to steer anybody away from the traditional leadership path, because that's my heart and soul, and they make the organization.
Those people.
and you can do it in so many different capacities, and we have such an opportunity to make a difference. So.
Yes, and there are people that are more than qualified to be in those positions.
Yes.
I think, I often think in terms of, PhD work and DMP work, just because that's where my, practice lies. How can we take that traditional leader and pair them with maybe a non-traditional leader like myself, where you have somebody that can, walk the walk, talk the talk, go to these meetings, know the budget, know the C-suite, etc. But then you have somebody like me who's a little bit more, kind of rough around the edges, I would say, just, knowing myself professionally and personally, that might not always be this perfectly polished packaged thing, but is really passionate and has this really unique skill set to do certain aspects to get this that you're wanting at the C-suite. There's a beautiful marriage that could be there. And I think I saw a clip of one of your previous colleagues you were interviewing with the last clip. I forgot what her name was, but there was a section where she said, delegate the outcome, don't dictate the process or the approach of how they got there. Yep. And I love that. That stuck with me. Anything that I learned from that conversation, it was that of we all have that shared goal, but all of us have different ways of getting there, and facilitate that and harness that and nurture that and let people get to where we need to be. I think that's the best thing.
Love it.
Okay, so if anyone wanted to connect with you, maybe talk about your, I know you said that your role is going to be coming up open. So maybe if someone wanted to talk to you about that, as far as for the Oncology Nursing Society editor role, if someone wanted to connect with you for mentorship or anything like that, where is the best place for them to find you, get in contact? Where are you hanging out?
I'm going to plug my LinkedIn, because that's probably the best way to reach me. And you can just send me a direct message on there, and I can share my email address via that way. I am coming at the end of my term of associate editor, and I'm really looking for somebody who can give clinical voices to publications. I think that's another thing I just want to highlight before we leave. Oftentimes in our nursing publications, it's very research driven. And I really have taken time in my role as associate editor to give clinical voices and get clinical practice out into the sphere. So on my LinkedIn page, there is the link to follow if you are interested in being an associate editor or just want more information about what that term looks like and involves. On my LinkedIn page, I'm Tia T. Wheatley. And you can either use that link or direct message me if you want to connect, either for the associate editor thing or just connect about other things that maybe spark your interest as well in the hematology oncology world.
Okay, I want to thank you so much for accepting the invitation.
Of course, thank you.
I appreciate you saying yes, and it has been such a pleasure and a wonderful conversation.
Yes, welcome to the Rule Breakers Club. You are a rule breaker.
It is a badge I will wear proudly.
Please do.